Hey, this is Gerd Handel, and welcome to the Inner Light Project. This show is for anyone who's wanting to lead a happier, healthier, and enlightened life. Create more self-love, inject more joy and abundance into their daily life. Join me for inspiring interviews and spiritual topics so you can shine your inner light. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inner Light Project. My name is Gerd Handel and today I want to share with you someone who is helping people to live a single life without guilt or shame. Now this topic is so interesting because there's more women than ever before who are single, who are childless as well. And it's interesting how much it stirs up a debate about how women should act, think and behave in society, and that we should have children when really we don't have to if we don't want to. It's such a fascinating topic for myself as well, being a woman in her late 30s. And it's just so interesting what we'll be sharing on the show today. Lucy Meggeson is the host of Thrive Solo Podcast and the author of Shiny Happy Singles, and has dedicated her work to help women realise that being single is a gift. She believes we can all lead a beautiful life romantically, child-free or both. Hi Lucy, I'm so grateful to have you on the show and thank you for joining us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Oh, bless you. I'm just excited to talk about what we're going to be talking about today, about, being single and why it's such a gift, because I feel like a lot of people don't realize it is. I think society makes us feel like when you're a woman, especially in being single, it's seen as a burden.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is a whole reason I started my podcast. It's why I wrote my book. I mean, basically, to give you a little bit of context and to give your listeners a bit of context. So I've been in relationships all my life since I was like a teenager. But this time around is the longest I've ever been single, which is coming up 8 years. In fact, it's almost exactly 8 years to the day. But basically, one of the things that I feel so passionately about is it's not about trying to send a message out that says being single is better than being in a relationship. But what I want to get across is the fact that it is equally good. Like whatever life path you're on has challenges. So if you're in a relationship, there are challenges. If you're single, there are challenges. If you're in a relationship, there are joys. And if you're single, there are also joys. It's just the challenges and the joys, the upsides and the downsides are very different for both of those paths, but neither one is better or worse. So that's one of the things that I talk about so much. And also, the crazy thing is, the thing that kind of blows my mind on a daily basis is the fact that what we do is with relationships, we sort of shine a spotlight on all of the wonderful things, but we completely disregard the challenges and the difficulties, and we don't talk about that in society. Whereas when it comes to single life, we shine a spotlight on the challenges, but we don't talk about all the wonderful benefits. And the thing that blows my mind is that there are so many fabulous benefits of being single that nobody talks about. And I'm like, guys, why are you not talking? Why are we not talking about, freedom and opportunity and peace and lack of compromise? These are not small things that that single life affords us. So yeah, I mean, I feel passionate about it. I could talk about this topic until the cows come home.
Honestly, I love it because it's so true. Like I've been single for a long time, a while back, and I learned a lot about myself on that journey of being single. I
Yeah.
remember a lot of friends were getting married in their early 20s, mid 20s, and there was me just like being single. But it taught me who I was becoming on the journey. And if
Yeah.
I was with somebody at that time, I wouldn't be who I am right now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have those skills that I have right now. And I needed that time to reflect. What do I desire? What do I want? Where do I want to head? Who do I want to become in the world?
Yeah, 100%. This is such a big one. I'm so glad you brought this up because one of the things I talk about a lot on the podcast is what an opportunity being single actually is, not least because it allows you to really go inwards. And as you say, work out what it is that you want from your life. And I will always argue that actually the most important relationship that we will ever have is the one that we have with ourselves. So when we start there, we then enter any subsequent relationships from a place of strength rather than a place of sort of desperation or weakness and all of that. So, oh my God, I think this is just, it one of the amazing things about having time as a single woman is that you get to do that work on yourself. And when I say do the work on yourself, I don't mean, working to sort of make yourself better for a relationship. I don't mean that at all. I just mean doing that in a work that essentially enables you to live a better, more meaningful, more joyful life. And that's one of the things that I've loved so much about the last 8 years of being single, is that it's allowed me to have time to really focus on the relationship that I have with myself. And as a result, I've been able to work out what it is that I want from my life for me. And I think whether or not you want a relationship or not, you should go into a relationship being clear on what it is that you want from your own life, not just me and this person, me and that person. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. And I think as women, especially as young girls, we were always trained, I would say, to think about everybody else, their needs, put them first, forget ourselves. So a lot of us, like, we're chasing these goals and these dreams, but again, people pleasing to get there. But then we don't know what we want from life. And then we have like a midlife crisis, and you might be in a relationship, then you feel like you don't know who you are. But when have you actually had that time to have an education, not even education, what's the word? Connection with yourself, an
Yeah.
understanding of yourself. Like when we peel off those layers, then we discover who we truly are. Like
Yeah.
you get rid of the emotional, the spiritual, the financial, every aspect of your life. You need to kind of look at like, who am I? What do I want? And the reason I'm talking about this is because I've done 13 years of inner work on myself. So having done those layers and with clients and seeing, I see a lot of patterns. A lot of women don't have knowledge of self,
Yeah. It's
which
so
is
true.
so important to have that me time to understand what you want, because you might end up in a
Yeah.
relationship, and that's not a bad thing, but are you losing yourself, or are you enhancing yourself in that situation, and in that relationship are you bettering yourself? I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't realize that.
No, I completely hear you 100% on this because, like you use the word people pleaser, and so often as women, we have been conditioned to think that our main job in life is to be a people pleaser. And as we move into adulthood, it's like we find the guy or the girl and we get married, and our priority is them, and then we have kids and our priority is them. And I think part of the problem in so many relationships in the world, dare I say, the divorce rate is, let's face it, around about 50%. So there's obviously
Yeah.
something that's not quite working in a lot of cases. And I think it's partly because women, or some women, will tend to find themselves in a relationship that perhaps isn't right for them because they didn't think to necessarily question it, because of the incredibly strong messaging that single women and women in general get from society, which is, you must do this in order to succeed. This is what a life looks like. A successful life looks like you get the guy, you get married, you get the house, you have kids. That is success in the eyes of society. And still, even in 2025, even though the narrative, I think, is very, very slowly starting to shift, I think really that narrative is still very much there. It's ingrained in our psyches, it's ingrained in our subconscious. And so the danger is that women can sometimes find themselves in relationships that aren't necessarily right for them. And as you say, it can result in people waking up at, 45, 50, going, holy fuck, what have I been doing with my life? Who am I? And also, I think when it comes to kids as well, and don't get me wrong, like, I love kids. My sister has 4 kids. My brother has a kid. I love them. But I think so often for women, they throw themselves into child rearing. And what can sometimes happen is that when those kids then up and leave the nest, fly the nest, sometimes when women end up going, oh my gosh, who am I and what do I want from my life? And they can sometimes feel bereft when their kids leave home because they're not sure who they are and where they're going and what their focus and their purpose is beyond kids. So again, I always encourage people to, whether or not you're in a relationship, you have to do that work on yourself, because aside from anything else, I think we have to be able to cultivate our own feelings of happiness and joy within ourselves. If we are outsourcing our happiness to people outside of ourselves, it doesn't work. And that's not to say that we can't. Of course, we can get happiness from relationships and, romantic relationships, friendships, children. Of course, we can. But ultimately, external relationships cannot sustain someone who is not sustainable within themselves. So it's another reason why building that relationship with yourself and really working on that is going to serve us down the line, because let's face it, none of us know what is going to happen in the future. We might get divorced. Our kids might move to Australia. So we have to be able to be okay in and of ourselves. I really think this is just so hugely important. It's perhaps something that isn't talked about enough, dare I say.
Oh, 100%. And something that you said was about women living through their children. I see a lot of women doing that. And then they've spent their whole lives living through their children. So they don't have knowledge of self. And that's where they get confused. Like, who am I? What's my identity? Is my relationship working? It's just that you've never really sat with yourself to
Yeah.
understood, what is your trauma? Why do you feel this way? Why do you feel the sense of abandonment?
Yeah.
Where does this pattern stem from? Is it from mum? Is it dad? Is it from both
Yeah.
families? Like, what is it that you desire from life? And I think a lot of women growing up, what we saw, like as role models, ran for like the whole independent woman, but then suddenly got into relationships and had marriage and kids and then had a bit of an identity crisis. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm making sense here, but like then they kind of had to refine themselves again.
Yeah.
And so what I've realized is that we need to have knowledge of self. So then
Yeah.
we're not in those situations where we feel like we've lost ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? This work. It is just, I mean, I am constantly a work in progress. And even though I've been, I talk about my spiritual awakening that happened around about 5 years ago. I talk about it. Well, some people I'll say spiritual awakening to. It depends on my audience. But sometimes I'll say that, and sometimes I'll say, I just kind of woke up. But I know that I can say spiritual awakening on this podcast, and you completely know where I'm coming from. And that happened for me about 5 or so years ago. But what I will say is that it really is something it's just an ongoing process. Like we are constantly evolving and changing and shifting. I think for me anyway, it came down to this realization, and still does, that about 5 or 6 years ago, I realized that I had so much more control over myself and my life than I thought I did. And one thing that I really love, it's a subject that I find absolutely fascinating, and it's a subject that I can be incredibly triggering, but I feel like I can talk about it because this was me. I used to be such a fucking victim. I
Mm.
used to think that, like 10, 15 years ago, it was like, this is wrong because of that person or that thing, or,
Mm.
whatever it is, I don't have enough money, or I'm in the wrong job, or it's my partner's fault, da 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 da. And I think what so many of us don't realize is that when we're sitting in a place of victimhood, we are blaming other people for our problems.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the most empowering things that I have found is that when you take radical responsibility for yourself and your life, then, oh my God, life gets so much better. And by the way, what I will say is that, we all experience trauma. We all go through shit in our lives. Some people, obviously, much worse than others. But the truth is that we can choose to allow that trauma or that story, we can choose to allow that to dictate the rest of our lives and become, make that become who we are. So for example, in this particular conversation in relation to, my audience and what I talk about, when it comes to not having kids, for example, I know women, and I've heard from listeners to the podcast, and I've spoken to people about this. There are some women who haven't been able to have children or haven't ended up having children for whatever reason, which is, of course, a huge journey in itself.
Yeah.
It can be desperately heartbreaking. There is so much grief involved, and I do not want to in any way undermine that journey.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that I think with anything, including if you end up not having kids for whatever reason, I think you have to get to a point where you realize that no one's coming to save you. And either you allow that story to define you for the rest of your life, or you take back control and you start
Mm.
telling a different story. And I think what can happen when you don't kind of look at yourself is that you can end up sitting in this place of victimhood for years and years and years without realizing. And again, I totally did that without even realizing it. But when you start recognizing that in yourself, and it can be so painful and it can be so triggering because no one wants to see that in themselves. Nobody wants to admit that they're being a victim. But when you face up to that, it just opens everything up. It just opens up your life because when you start taking full responsibility for yourself and the direction that your life is going in, you've taken your power back, you've taken your control back. But until you get to that point, it's very difficult to do that. But once you do, everything opens up and your life can become much more expansive. That's been my experience anyway.
I love that. Well, I love what you've just said because it's so true. And, I can relate as well. Like in 2012 was I call it my rebirth journey. And I was 25 years old. I was sat in the hospital waiting for some cancer scare results. And I sat there, thought, what have I done to deserve this? Because again, we played kind of like the victim situation. And I heard a voice say, you created this. And I was like, what? Who is that? There was nobody in the room.
Wow.
I was just waiting there by myself and I thought, oh, I'm going crazy. Great. Got my results, was misdiagnosed, ran out the hospital crying, and I heard it's time to heal.
Oh
And I have
my
never
gosh.
looked back.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I love that you were saying about, the victim mentality because I've noticed it with clients and other people. Like we can go on blaming our parents for everything. Okay, yes, they're not perfect. And, we sometimes put our parents on a pedestal, but when we realize that they're human,
Yeah.
then we can see why they are where they are. What was their childhood like? Why did they become the way that they became that way? But then you have a choice to stay in
Totally.
that victimhood, or you can say, I'm ready to take my power back. I can't
Yeah.
control what they did or how they treated me growing up, but I can control the next narrative of my life.
This is I love this conversation so much. It's such a simple thing, but it can be so incredibly complicated and so incredibly hard. But exactly like you say, we are all a product of our parents, but we do have a choice as to whether we carry on blaming everything that is wrong with our lives. Well, my dad was this or my mum was that. I'm fucked up because this is how my parents treated me. And again, not to undermine anything that anyone's been through,
Yeah.
but the truth is that we do have a choice as to whether we carry that around and allow it to limit us and hold us back for the rest of our lives, or whether we go, no, I am taking, I think when you become an adult and getting even I still think sort of early 20s is still really, really young. Do you know what I mean? So I'm talking
Yeah.
about when you get into your kind of 30s, I think then you have to sort of really make a decision as to whether you, or as to how you're going to move forward. But it's interesting when you start. I would encourage listeners to start noticing this in people and themselves because it often requires a bit of mindfulness to even become aware of this kind of thing. But when you
Mm.
start noticing, you see or you start hearing so many people, you realize that they are doing exactly that. They're carrying a story around with them and they're retelling it over and over again. It's something that happened 17 years ago and they're still blaming everything on that today. And when you sort of start noticing this, it's really, really interesting to see how many people are repeating the same stories. And I think the frustrating thing is, and I don't know what you think about this, but in my experience, it it would never have been a case of somebody just saying, "Oh, Lucy, you're sitting in victimhood. You're doing this or that on the other.
Mm.
You need to change." It has to come from you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that, and I've realized this as I've gone into my, I'm going to be 50 in like a very, very short amount of time.
No
I've got
way.
January the 1st. I'm turning 50. I swear to God, Zoom takes about 10 years off me. It really does.
I thought you were late 30s.
Oh my God. Well, I love you for saying that, but truly, I look about, honestly, Zoom is so flattering. But no, I think I've completely lost my train of thought. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh my God, what was I saying before
You were
that?
talking about how people, when you start looking at people, how they carry on with the same victimhood mentality like 17
Yes.
years later and don't change.
Yes, and the fact that it always has to come from you. It's like you know, I don't know if you, I'm sure you've heard of Mel Robbins. I absolutely love Mel Robbins. I listen to her podcast. I think she's awesome. And, she sort of says, nobody's coming to save you, which I just agree with so much because it's so true. Nobody is. You have to save yourself. But the truth is that until you are ready to change yourself, then it doesn't matter how many times somebody tries to help you. And until you're ready to help yourself, then you're not going to change. And I know that because way back then, I remember actually having a conversation. This was probably about 10 years ago. And I remember my brother saying to me, he was like, you could be really negative. And I
Oh, bless you.
took it. I took massive offense because, of course, I was like right in that kind of victim mode. I was like, "Argh," and it just made me really angry. I was like, "Argh," and do you know what I mean? I just felt really hurt and really upset and really angry. But I also knew that there was some truth to that.
Hmm.
But it was only when I was ready to start making the change myself that I was able to actually start doing something about it. But yeah, it's worth noticing this in other people because I think that can sometimes help you notice it in yourself.
100%. And usually the people closest to us trigger us the most. So
Totally.
for your brother saying that, that's like, how dare he? Because he kind
Yeah.
of knows those insecurities and those feelings. And we
Yeah.
usually, yeah, 100% triggered by family the most. And what I was going
Yeah.
to say is all of us are here to be the generational shift patterners in our
Yeah.
family. So that's why there is such a rise of people healing now than ever before. So even if you've gone through the most horrific thing in your life, your family has, it's generational, we're ready to, it's a time to heal that now.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of clients go through, you can't even imagine some of the things that I've heard, they're like horrific things, but they've healed because they know that if they don't it's not about letting it go, but it's more about the forgiveness. If they don't forgive that situation, they're holding themselves back for the future of
Yes.
who they can become. And when they let go, they just become their happiest, their healthiest,
Yeah.
their joyful side. And I can relate as well. I had a health condition back in 2015. I didn't know I had a kidney defect until 2017. And I went through this whole journey of doing the inner work in 2012, then hitting in my 30s. I'm close to I'm 38 now. So I'm close to my 40s now. And, I remember being in this victimhood again. I thought, oh, well, I've cleared it. How have I ended up in this situation? Because suddenly my health went down. I was at this amazing stage in my career. Everything was going well. Suddenly everything went downhill. And I had to rebuild again. And I
Yeah.
had to let go of the deepest fears, the worries, the emotions that I had that were hidden that I didn't even know were there, and release that victimhood of about the health story because there was a lot of health issues in my family growing up. So it was
Right.
like, why me? What have I done again to deserve this? And then I found a solution, I found a way, and I healed it and overcame it. But I know that everything that I went through was my blessing to become the
Yeah.
person I was becoming in my 30s. But at that time, it was the worst thing of my life. I couldn't understand why,
Yeah.
but it helped me to notice, like you said, who are the positives, who are the negatives, who do I want in my life, who do I want to become moving forward.
Yeah.
So much amazing medicine through it at that time. But even at that time, I was living crazily, living off 3 hours sleep. Don't
Wow.
ask me why, Lucy. I was just like building everything up crazily. That was a blessing for me because I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, this is making me think that it's one thing that I try and say to myself. This is getting a bit woo now, but I have started to, well, since I've been on this journey for the last sort of 5 or 6 years, I believe that everything is working in my favor. I believe that the universe is working in my favor, in all of our favor. And it might sound crazy to some people, but when you choose to live your life from that place, when you choose to think, well, whatever is happening right now, number one, what can I learn from this? And so often, like in your case, when you look back, you're like, oh, that's why that happened. And I just think it's a much nicer way to live when rather than resisting what is, to say, everything is working in my favor, everything is working out for me. This is happening for a reason, and what can I learn from this? I think just that shift in mindset. I mean, God, I am obsessed with mindset, right? This is something I talk about. Like, I'm more obsessed with mindset and, cultivating a more positive and empowering mindset. I'm almost more obsessed with that than I am about this message for single child free women, because I think whether you're single or not, mindset really is everything.
Mm.
It really truly is how you think about the world, how the lens through which you are looking at the world makes a huge, huge difference to your experience of the world. It's like Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And this is something that I have learned on this spiritual journey that I've been on, that it's all about the way that we are choosing. And I emphasize the word choose because it is a choice. And again, this is something that I didn't have 10, 15 years ago. But these days, I've become so much more mindful of what is going on in my head and how I am looking at a situation.
Mm.
And I think it's so important. Like, I really believe that one of the keys to living your best possible life is to shift into a more positive mindset. And I'm not saying it's as simple as just mindset. Like, I know a lot of this stuff lives in our body, and sometimes, we want to use somatic practices and all of that as well. But I really do think, and I talk about it on the podcast. I have a membership for single women called Thrive Solo, and I talk about this over and over again in the membership because I know from my own experience that when you kind of wise up to how much the way you are thinking is impacting your life for good or for bad, it really makes you sit up and take notice and go, oh my God.
Mm.
And going back to the inner work, this is one of the main things that I call inner work is working on what the fuck is going on in your mind. Excuse my French for the 50th time. Because what is going on in your mind, how you are thinking, the thoughts that you're identifying with the thoughts that you're believing, is hugely impacting the way that you feel about your life. And subsequently, I might add, what is showing up in your life. I believe that we are, well, it's not even that I believe it's a scientific fact. We are vibrational, we are energetic beings.
Yes.
We are 99.9999% energy and only 1% matter. And what we are putting out into the world, the frequency that we are putting out into the world, it really matters. And again, when you're stuck in sort of negativity and victimhood, you don't realize or you don't appreciate how the worse you feel and the more negative you're being and the more you're blaming everything around you, all you're doing is attracting more stuff to feel shit about into your life. Whereas when you start shifting the way that you see life and you change the lens that you're looking through, bloody hell, it makes such a big difference to your experience of life. And, you start experiencing different things, different people start coming into your life, the right people start coming into your life. I talk about this so much that we want to be prioritizing everything. And by the way, this isn't like, oh yes, let's be toxically positive and be happy all the time. It's not that. But it's prioritizing. Can you feel good 51% and shit 49%? Can you just start tipping the balance so that you can, and it always comes down to awareness. You can't change anything until you bring awareness to what is going on in your mind.
100%. And what you're saying is that life is never going to be fully percent happy. There's happiness, there's sadness, there's joy, there's grief, but it's about riding through the emotions so you're not stuck in the sadness. So like
Yes.
yesterday, I don't know if it was Diwali, and so I'm Indian, and Diwali is about coming out of the darkness into the light. Gurd is actually my nickname. Gurdeep is actually my first name, and my name means helping people out of the darkness into their light. Lamp of
Oh,
the teacher, lamp of the guru.
oh
So my
wow.
whole life has been going through dark cycles, coming out, back into the light, darkness, light, and learning and reflecting. And that's what life is about. We have
Yeah,
to go through those struggles and those hurdles to become the versions that we're meant to be. We become wiser through experiences. Now, if we're happy 24/7, I'd be like, something's not right there. Right? But then if we're stuck in sadness as well, equally something's not right there. But we
yeah,
have a choice. That's what you're trying to say, is that we always have a
yeah,
choice. We can sit there, feel sorry for ourselves for a little bit, but we've got to get back up on the ladder and
yeah,
start again. But if we
yeah,
stay in that darkness, that vibration that we're sending out to the world and to people around us is going to drain them too. And
yeah,
it's not to say that you shouldn't feel what you're feeling. Feel those feelings, but it's time to forgive and move forward.
yeah.
When we stay stuck, and I did it too, I stayed stuck for years. Like I was angry at people and situations and friendship circles. And it was only till I was 25 when I started the inner work. That's when I realized that I had a choice. Like I was so different before, very serious. If you got out in my way in London, I'd be like, get out of my way, like very angry and just annoyed with life. And then I
Yeah.
let go, and now I look younger than what I did in my 20s. It's because I choose to live in that joy,
Yeah.
even when I was going through my hardships with my health condition,
Yeah.
even when I was going through, I've had several health conditions. I chose joy in those
Yeah.
genres, but I felt my feelings. I think when we feel our feelings, then we heal. Then we're able to come back into that joy. And again, being single as well, like, oh my God, like, so, I'm 38, I don't have kids, I'm not married. And in the culture I grew up, it's, shunned upon.
Yeah.
People still say, why is she not married? Why is this? Why is that? And I used to sit there and, take it personal. But did they know I went through a health condition for nearly 10 years? No. Were they holding my hand when I went through it?
Mm.
No. Am I ready to have kids yet? No. But that's my choice. And I think that's where a lot of women are conditioned because we followed patterns of our families when they got married. There's, growing up for us was like everyone got married in their 20s, right? That was
Yeah.
normal. Now people getting married in their 30s and 40s, and that's the normal age. But in
Yeah.
our parents' generation and great grandparents' generation, some of them were getting married at 18. And a lot of women
So
didn't,
young.
right? They didn't even
Yeah.
have knowledge of self.
Yeah.
How would they know who they are?
Yeah.
And that's deeply rooted within us, generational. That's why a lot of us have guilt as to why we're not married at a certain age, because it's deeply rooted. And when we
Yeah.
heal that, we set ourselves free. And that's what you're talking about is the knowledge of self.
Yeah.
Gosh, I could go on about this for ages.
No, I know. But it's such an interesting topic, and one thing that I just wanted to pick up on that you said, because I think this is quite key. Like you so rightly said, it's not about being happy all the time. That would be, if we were happy all the time, if there was no such thing as sadness, we wouldn't appreciate the happiness. We have to have the lows to appreciate the highs. But I think going back to sort of cultivating a more positive mindset, what that does, certainly in my experience, is it enables you. And you were talking about, you choose joy, and it's the same. We're talking about the same thing, just in a slightly different way. But I think when you're able to look at the world through a more positive lens, what it means, what it enables you to do is to bounce back quicker. It makes you more resilient when you train yourself. And by the way, you can train yourself to be more positive. I know this because at my core, I'm actually much more pessimistic than I am an optimist. But I have trained myself, and I've done that work on my mindset to become an optimist. So I think one of the main things about why it's so important to cultivate a more empowering mindset is because it allows you to be more resilient and to bounce back from issues quicker. Whereas when you don't have such a great mindset, you tend to stay in the shite for longer. You just sort of like
Mm.
wallow in all the crap, as I very much used to. Whereas these days, I mean, even silly things, like you were talking about how you used to sort of walk around London like feeling really angry and like, "Rrr." And I can totally relate to that because that totally used to be me as well. Like I'd get so triggered if someone knocked into me or, get. And actually, often it comes down to, and this is also something really interesting to observe in other people. It comes down to the little things. And it's something I talk about a lot in my podcast. It's like, how long do you dwell on crap that doesn't matter?
Mm.
How long are you allowing yourself? Like if somebody nicks your parking space, are you still talking about that at work 4 hours later? Do you know what I mean? If somebody like if something happened, and obviously it's all relative, like obviously the bigger things are the bigger things, but just those sort of day-to-day things, if you're allowing yourself to get really wound up because you're going to be late and it ruins your whole day, like how long are you allowing yourself to dwell on stuff that is completely out of your control? This is another thing that is so important is to realize and really, really get your head around this very, very simple thing, which is that the one and only thing we have control over in life is ourselves. It's how we think, it's how we feel, it's how we respond to things. That's it. Everything else is out of our control. But so many of us waste so much precious energy getting wound up and dwelling on shit that doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. I used to just complain about silly things that even
Same.
waste of time. And I don't know about you, but like I grew up in a lot of a fear-based energy environment as a child. So I used to take on all everyone's fears and everyone's worries and think the worst case scenario. And when I started doing the inner work and, I had to train my mind like you did as well, I used to be like, whoa, why are they so negative? Like, they need to lighten up. But again, sometimes you fall into that trap when you're around it. But it's as you start working on yourself, you realize that you can't change people and that's their narrative and let them be that way. We can't control that. But we can control our mindset and how we feel. And, you can just cleanse your energy and go back into your little bubble and off you go.
Totally. I had the fabulous, have you heard of Cara Lowenthal?
I haven't actually, no.
Oh my God, you must check her out. She is awesome. She's American. She lives in Brooklyn. She's absolutely fantastic. She has a podcast, and she was a lawyer, and then she became a life coach. She's absolutely awesome. I highly recommend anyone check her out. Cara Lowenthal. Anyway, she was on. I interviewed her. I'd been trying to get her on the podcast for literally 2 years, and she finally said yes. I was like, yay! But she came up with this brilliant analogy, which was that basic, and speaking to our conversation now on this topic, she said, if you think about it, if you're driving along in a car that is full of cigarette butts and old McDonald wrappers and the AC's not working and the stereo's broken, if you're driving along in a car like that, you're not going to have a very good time. It doesn't matter if you are driving through the most amazing scenery. If the car is a shithole, I've sworn so much, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have told me I could swear.
Please do.
But you know what I mean? Like if the car that you're in, if the vehicle that you are riding through life in is full of crap, then it doesn't matter what's going on outside of you. It doesn't matter how beautiful the scenery. You're not going to be able to appreciate it because actually you are being affected by the vehicle that you are in. Whereas if you are in a beautiful, like Range Rover that I'd love to get one day, like a gorgeous, car with amazing AC and an amazing stereo, and you've got amazing music on, and you've got your gorgeous drink there in the kind of drink holder, and it's this beautiful car. Even if the scenery outside is a bit crap, you're still going to have a nice ride because of the vehicle that you're in. And when she said this, I just was like, oh my God, that is such a brilliant way of putting it. So I just wanted to share that with your listeners too. Thanks, Cara.
I love that. That is
I wish
so
I could say I
funny.
came up with it, but I didn't.
But it's so true. But like, you know what? You're just making me think about my childhood. Like, don't get me wrong, my parents are amazing. My family's amazing in many ways. It's just their mindset is very different to mine. And life has been, we've gone through a lot as a family, like certain situations. But I remember as a child throwing up in the car every time we went on long distances. I now understand it was because I was picking up everyone's emotions and feelings and whatever they were going through. And like only recently, bless my mum, like I spent some time with my mum longer than, like, gosh, in 16 years, I have not spent 2 months with my mum, like day in, day out for that long. And she was like, your energy is so positive. No matter what life throws at you, you just, you shift with whatever happens. And she goes, you're right. Everything is about positive and negative energy. And we have a choice. And like now she's like, this is positive. I love being like this. And this is negative energy. And when my dad came back after he'd been away, he's like, wow, what has happened to your mum? Like her energy has just shifted. I said, yeah, well, it's just about being more in joy and being happiness. We have a joy. We have a choice whether to be sad or happy all the time.
Yeah.
Life can be, actually it's the other day, I was getting a taxi to the train station. I literally, oh my God, Lucy, I had 3 minutes to get on the train.
Oh God.
And I was saying to
The
the Uber driver, I was like, well, if I get it, I get it. If I don't, it's not the end of the world. Maybe the universe wants me to pay an extra more for a ticket, but it's okay. And he was like, I like your positive energy. And I was like, thank you. And I'm like, you know what? I'm still going to make it. And he looked at me like I was crazy because I had 3 suitcases. And he looked at me like, I don't think you're going to make it. I said, I'll make it. And he just laughed at me. And I ran with 3 suitcases, got to the check-in point. I said, can you just open the doors? Let me through. I got to got to the train. I said, can you just help me? Chuck my suitcases and the door shut. And I was just like, it is what it is. I can't control
Yeah.
the narrative, but all I can do is try. That's the
Yeah.
key in life. We can just
Yeah.
try, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But we
Yeah.
always have a choice. Now, I could have been very angry, very frustrated in the taxi, could have annoyed the taxi driver, could have been annoying getting, to the checking point. But if I was, then where would the help be?
Yeah. What's that going to achieve? Totally. You mentioned the word choice, and I remember, I don't remember the exact time, but I remember hearing years and years ago, the first time I either read or heard somebody say, happiness is a choice. And I was like, yeah, what a load of rubbish. And of course now I realize that it's the goddamn truth. There's a reason why that is a quote that you read on a card, or because it's like so many quote cliches. There is truth in them, and it is so damn true that happiness is a choice. um yeah, so it's really worth kind of looking more into that and really asking yourself, well, am I choosing happiness? It's a choice we have to make every day, because we all have all of us are going to go through crap in our lives, there's no question. Yeah.
I'm just going to say one more thing. Just reminded me, like, even when I was having my operation for my kidney, I could have been worrying and stressing, and people were around me. But I chose not to. I was very happy. I was present in the moment. I had a little mini crystal, asked if they could just tape it to my pillow. They taped it.
Oh,
I sent positive energies to everybody, the surgeons, the machines, and I woke up really happy. And everything was fine. Again, I had a choice to be in fear or in joy in that
right,
situation. I was so
right.
grateful that I was getting a new life again. And actually, funny enough, when I woke up, the podcast name changed because before it used to be Get Inspired with Gerds. And I woke up and heard Inner Light, Inner Light. We all have an inner light. So that's where the birth of the Inner Light Project came from.
It's a great name, I love it.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a few more questions left to ask you.
Okay.
Uh, why do you think women are afraid of being single?
I think largely because we have been conditioned to think that single life is less than married life, less than partnered life. And like I said earlier, even though the narrative is starting to very, very, very slowly shift, or maybe it's the lens through which I look at life, maybe because I have so many conversations about this and, all the rest of it, I'm kind of in that world. But I do think it is largely subconscious beliefs that we did not even choose. It's crazy how much the narrative and the patriarchy and just the fact that we live in a world that has been built for couples. It's woven through the fabric of society. It's in so many different, health insurance, like if you have a part,
Oh my God.
all so many things, like there are so many messages constantly telling us that to be in a couple is a superior way of life than to be single. And so I really think this is where it largely comes from. And in fact, I was talking about this in my membership quite recently. If, like, let's say that single, let's pretend for a minute that being single was as acceptable and as quote normal, if it genuinely was seen to be as just as normal as being in a relationship, I wonder how much less single women would suffer, you know?
Hmm.
And ultimately, one thing I talk about is the fact that singlehood is neutral. It is the meaning that we attach to it that is the problem. I recently did a webinar actually, which I called Being Single Isn't the Problem, because being single isn't the problem. It's the me. And again, there are probably people rolling their eyes like, wow, perhaps there are some listeners going, but yeah, but it is, in my life, it is. I'm single. And I know that the reason I'm unhappy is because I'm single. And I still would say being single isn't the problem.
Hmm.
It's the meaning that we attach to what being single means. So I really do think that the patriarchy, society, the narrative, all of this has massively impacted and continues to impact the way that single women feel. So actually, it takes again, it's a decision to take back control. We literally have to change those narratives because, you'll know this, like only 5% of our mind is our conscious thinking mind. 95% of it is of us is our subconscious. So our subconscious beliefs are literally running the show of our lives. So I could think, or someone could think, yeah, no, I know being single is equal to being in a relationship. I know it is. Like intellectually we can know that. But if we still are running from the subconscious program that being single is less than, then it doesn't matter how many times we tell ourselves that to in our conscious mind, that 5%. What we have to do is we have to get down into our subconscious and start changing those stories, start changing those beliefs. And, because of neuroplasticity, which I'm sure you're all over and you know all about, we can change the wiring in our brain up until the day we fricking die. It's just another thing that we have to work on, but it's really worth the effort because once you start changing those beliefs and choosing beliefs that serve you, then you can just live a much freer life. And you don't, it just pains me when being single is a reason for somebody to feel crap about their life, because there is absolutely no reason why being single should mean that your life is crap. You can want to be in love, you can want to be in a relationship, but it doesn't, it doesn't, you don't have to come from a place of lack, as in you can still have a full, enjoyable life as a single woman. Absolutely, 100%. And I know that from my own experience, but I also know it from the experience of lots of happily single women that I talk to. It's not a given that being single equals crapness or, loneliness or anything else. We just have to decide to change those stories. But again, it's accessing those subconscious beliefs and literally choosing beliefs that are going to serve us and tell ourselves a different story.
Yeah, I love that because one thing I've learned on my journey is when I was single, like I shifted my vibration, my frequency energy. And the more work I did, the more I attracted better people. So even if you do want to be in a relationship, when you have that time to work on yourself, your vibration just changes and what you do want in your life. And a lot of women think, why can I not attract this kind of guy? Why is that happening? A lot of the time it's our own inner beliefs that we need to shift and work on. And when we do the inner work and we work on ourselves during our singlehood, we actually vibrate to a frequency that we can attract what we do want moving forward.
Totally.
And I've
So
seen
true.
that.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like as soon that really annoying thing that people sometimes say, which is the minute you stop waiting for it, someone will come along. And it's kind of that is slightly annoying, but it's kind of the same thing because basically once if you I always encourage single women to, again, it's not about saying don't get into a relationship again. It's not about that. It's what I encourage single women to do is to take their focus off the search, off the chasing, and
Yes.
focus back on themselves. Because when you become the best goddamn version of yourself by yourself as a single woman, then you are, apart from anything else, you are far less likely to settle for some fuckwit who isn't good enough for you. And I think this is part of the problem when you're
Yeah.
looking for a relationship from a place of lack or desperation, or I've got to get into a relationship because the clock's ticking, and oh my god, when you're coming from that energy, you are way more likely to settle for somebody who isn't bloody good enough for you and who
Yeah.
isn't bringing value to your life. And, to your point, it's so true that when you're feeling really good in yourself, you are going to attract the right partner into your life if that's what you want. And also, when you learn to feel just awesome being single, you get to a point where it's like, yeah, if I meet someone, great. If I don't meet someone, also great. I'm fine either way. That's where we want to be.
100%. And also, even if you choose to stay single, even if you meet somebody, you attract amazing opportunities because you're in that frequency as well. So it's not just about the relationship, it's about the opportunities, about things that you want to bring into your life will come flooding your way
Yeah.
versus when you're in that negative state. Like I can see the difference of who I was back in 2012 and who I am now, and the opportunities that have just come my way are so amazing versus when I was in that darkness and
Yeah.
feeling sorry for myself and playing that victimhood, thinking, why are the opportunities not coming? It's because
Yeah.
I created that narrative.
Yeah.
Again, we have
100.
that choice to create that positive narrative, and it's
Yeah.
all comes from within
It's
us, nobody
so,
else.
it really does. It's, as I've said like 10,000 times, I don't know who said this originally, but life is an inside job. It's such a cliche, but it's so true. It's all an inside job. And it's another one of those kind of cliche quotes that we see on cards or on Instagram, but it's so goddamn true. It really is an inside job. And if you can start to explore that, I mean, for anyone who's thinking, oh God, I'm not sure I really buy that, and I'm not really sure what that even means, all I would say is just go on a bit of a journey, get curious, listen to some podcasts, read some books, listen to some of the great thinkers like Wayne Dyer, like Earl Nightingale, like Neville Goddard. Start just exploring, because actually, when you start getting curious and you start exploring, you'll realize that great thinkers and philosophers have been telling us the same goddamn thing for centuries, millennia. It all comes back to the same thing, which is that it is an inside job. And what is going on in your mind is so much more important than you perhaps realize.
I love that. And what's your five top tips for someone who is single and wants to be in that joy state? Where can they start?
Okay, I would say number one, I would say get a morning routine going. Start the day off well. I get up at 5 o'clock. I'm a 5 a.m. club member. I've been doing it for about 5 years and it's changed my goddamn life. Because when you start your day off with positivity, whether that's, you could start journaling or meditating, it doesn't matter what. But when you take some time to start your day off in a really positive way, it's going to affect the rest of the day positively. So I really would say that start carving out even just half an hour in your morning, get up half an hour early, or even 15 minutes, and just maybe do some journaling or go for a walk. Moving on to number two, which is get in nature, because we are connected to nature. We are part of nature, and we've kind of forgotten this. We live in, you and I both know London very well. It's a concrete jungle. We've disconnected from what actually matters and what we're actually a part of, which is nature. I would massively encourage people to take some time every day. The research is there. Go and look it up. Time in nature is so good for our mental health. So that would be number two. Number three, I would say, and this is such a big one, ask yourself, what am I consuming on a daily basis? And that includes people, by the way, not just podcasts or social media. But this truly is one of the big ones. What are you allowing into your brain on a daily basis? Are you hanging out with people who truly believe that the only way to find happiness is to be in a relationship? Are you hanging around with really negative people? Look at who you're spending time with, look at what you're listening to. Another big one is, how much time are you spending listening to the news? And I know these things don't necessarily pertain to being single specifically, but when you look at these things in a more kind of wide context, you're just going to feel better in yourself. And speaking of what you're consuming, the next thing I would say is number four is find expanders. That's not my term, but expanders are people who show you what is possible. They're basically, so I could be someone's expander, for example. So I'm a single woman who is happily single and without kids. So I'm just a bit further down the line than perhaps you are, the listener, who is single but not quite there yet and just feeling a bit crap about it. Find expanders who show you, who prove to you what is possible for you. That's a really big one too. That's four. Oh gosh. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. The other one, which again, this is more general than being specific to single life, but it all helps, is really look at how much you are living your life in accordance with what other people are thinking about you and for you. How much are you allowing the opinions and the judgments of other people to impact the way that you feel about your life? That is a really, really big one. But in terms of specifically for singles, I would say find all the books, all the podcasts, and all the people on social media, and just start flooding your brain with conversations about happy singlehood and about how single life gets to be just as wonderful as coupled life, because there are many people out there, myself included, talking about it. And also, of course, find a community. Like I have, just to plug my own community, but I have a membership called Thrive Solo, which is full of single women who are trying to make the most of their lives regardless of their relationship status. So it doesn't have to be my community, but find community of other single women. Because just if you when you are only surrounded by people in couples, that's going to make you feel crap about being single.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people aren't necessarily going to land in your lap. So it's going back to what we were saying at the very beginning of this, it's take responsibility for finding other single people. And it doesn't have to be people who live in your town or your neighborhood or your village. It can be people online, but just find examples. Listen to people who are happily single, because that is how, kind of by osmosis, that is how you start to reprogram those beliefs. That is how you start to change the wiring in your brain. And that is how you ultimately start to change the way that you feel about being single. So Don't know if that helps.
Oh, I love those. Those are amazing. Thank you for sharing them. And if
You're
anyone's
welcome.
interested, you're welcome. If anyone's interested in knowing more about Lucy, we'll be putting everything in the show notes. And
Thanks, love.
you're welcome. And what I was going to say is it's so interesting about two things you said. The news. I actually am a former journalist. I walked away in 2012. So I understand news very well and how negative news affected me. I used to watch it at 5 o'clock in the morning, read the papers, have to be there and watch it all day long.
Yeah.
So I totally understand where you're coming from there. I choose not to really watch the news. I actually find it through social media, fun enough. And my vibration changed the moment I did that.
Right. It's
You
a
know, and
big one. It's a
I
big
trained,
one.
yeah, and I trained my whole life to be a journalist, not realizing how negative it was until I was in the industry and going, oh my God, why do I feel sad? Why am I drinking? Was because I was consuming so much negativity on a daily basis. And the environment, I was very pessimistic. So again, we have a choice to be around that narrative, or we can shift into a more positive frequency.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that you said was about finding single people. I think that's amazing because, oh my God, the amount of people that I knew, like in my early stages, who were married and judging me when I was on my journey, really did kind of make me feel like I wasn't worthy enough. And then when I did the deepest work, I realized that actually, no, being single in that moment is a gift because I'm learning about myself. And there's certain things that they don't see that I have the joy of becoming in a new vibration. So again, I slowly started to shift away from certain people like that because
Mm.
who are other people to judge our journey? You know, the universe, God gave us our journey for a reason. Sometimes our journey in meeting somebody is later down the line, or sometimes the universe says, in this lifetime, it's about choosing yourself. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay. There's no
Yeah.
shame in that.
Totally. And also, I think we sometimes feel with friends that, well, in fact, the question that I was going to ask is ask yourselves the question of how does this person make me feel?
Mm.
Because that is all you need to know. But what happens is I think we forget actually, friendships are fluid. Friendships don't have to last forever. I've had many, many friends over the years, some of whom I'm still in touch with, some of whom were in my life for 2 years, some of whom were in my life for 6 months.
Yeah.
You don't have to stay friends with every single person you've ever met in your life. And if somebody is bringing your energy down, then you don't necessarily have to cut everyone out of your life. I mean, some people
Yeah.
you kind of have to keep in your life, family members or close friends or whatever, but just ask yourself, how do I feel when I walk away from this person? When I get home, do I feel, is my energy up or do I just feel completely drained? Because if you feel drained, I would just encourage people to perhaps just see if you can limit your time with the people that make you feel drained, because it is all down to vibration and it's your life. So you want to be putting out that positive energy. We have to prioritize feeling good. We have to prioritize joy.
100%. And, that's the same. Like what you were saying is like, I've got friends who are married and have kids, but they are so happy and they're positive and they don't try to judge my journey. But the ones that did, those are the ones that I kind of just went,
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah.
And, I let them in again and it was the same response. So I realized over time, and I think sometimes it can take maybe not just one time, but maybe second or third time to realize, like you said, who's bringing in joy and who's depleting my joy.
Yeah. Completely. Completely.
I've got two more questions. What are you most grateful for? And what shines your inner light?
Do you know what I'm most grateful for? The first thing that comes into my head, my cat. I'm
Oh,
gonna play into the crazy cat lady narrative, but I am grateful for that little guy every freaking day. It's called Johnny, and I love
Johnny.
him so much. I can't even
Oh,
take it. He's 3 and a bit. I've had him since he was 12 weeks. And honestly, I mean, Christ, if you have been thinking about getting a pet and you want more joy in your life, that right there. Honestly, I look at this little guy every single day and I just think, oh my God, I am so grateful for you. So yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for lots of things, but the first person, pet that comes into my mind is Johnny. So yes.
oh, that's so cute. I love the name Johnny. That's so cool. Oh, and what
Do
color is he? I'm so curious.
you want to see a photo? I
Yeah.
mean, obviously this is great for a podcast. Hang on.
Oh, he's so cute.
He's a Bengal. He looks like
Oh,
a
I
I
love
mean,
it.
this is him pulling a stupid expression, but
He's fierce. I
he
like it.
he looks like a baby tiger. A tiger or a leopard. He's like, yeah, he's beautiful.
He's all about empowerment. I can feel it. It's
He
like the
is,
empowerment
honestly.
energy.
He's got the
Yeah.
best vibe. He really does.
Oh, oh bless him. Ooh, And what shines your inner light?
What shines my inner light? Gosh, I mean, lots of things, lots of things. But I'm going to say, actually, spending time, I mentioned this earlier, spending time in nature, actually. Um, I just find that going for a walk by the sea, when I'm in London, going for a walk by the river, that is kind of like my therapy. And it really, there aren't many things that a walk in nature won't make a little bit better. So that really is one of the things that definitely shines my light for sure. But there are lots, there are lots. I mean, I'm a big fan of podcasts, actually. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I get so much energy and so much joy from listening to really interesting conversations. And I'll tell you what else shines my light. Sorry, I'm on three things. But the conversations that I have for Thrive Solo for my podcast, those kind of conversations, much like this conversation, it's conversations like this, like you and I have just had, where they're completely authentic. You are just, it's coming from your soul. That lights me up. This kind of conversation lights me up. It really does. So yeah,
That's
there's three.
beautiful. I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you
Oh,
so much, Lucy, for just being yourself, sharing your story, and helping so many women to embrace being single with so much joy and happiness and love in their life. Thank you for being
oh,
you as well.
you're so welcome. Thank you for being you. And thank you so, so much for having me on. I really appreciated it.
Oh, you're welcome. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation today because it's so interesting how society sees women who are single and how we are judged for being that when really it's a gift and it's a choice that our female ancestors never had before. And here we are, this new generation, making choices about how we liberate our mind, how do we liberate our soul. We have a choice in how we get to live, lead, and love in our life, and that is such a beautiful gift. Now, if you're interested in Lucy's work, visit her website, and all her information is in the show notes below. Unfortunately, that's the end of the show. Before I leave, I want to leave you with this quote. Do what feels right, even if it means flying solo. That's a quote by an unknown editor. Now, if you're struggling to liberate your mind, body, and spirit from patriarchal people pleasing, and you want to trust the wisdom from within and speak your truth, visit my website at www.gertshundel.com and my program, The Liberation Alchemy, where I teach you for 4 months how to let go of all the patriarchal, cultural, society, familial trauma so you can really come back home to yourself. And remember, stay happy, stay healthy, stay lit.
Lit. Lit. Lit.